Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSC Squared podcast.
Hey, everybody. Mark and Steve on the PBSC podcast. Good to be with you here. This is episode 257.
Yes.
And I don't know if we've tackled this exact topic before.
I don't think that we have.
Yeah, the title, this was a really raw and real submission that a partner, in fact, two partners with very similar submissions sent us. This says, my addict partner has certain Philias, fetishes, and taboo behaviors. What is the impact of this on his recovery and our relationship? And we might have added, so we would have had a crazy long title, and my healing as a betrayed partner could have been added to that title as well. But we're going to read what she sent. And before we read this, please, if you've listened to PBSE long enough, you know that we're not here to make, big moral declarations about what's healthy and what's not, or, to give our big opinions about all of it. We pretty much try to present this from a very open, broad perspective place. We do a lot of inviting each of you listening to engage in the process that determines for you what is healthy, for you what is connecting, what brings you together as a coupleship, what aids in your recovery or your healing. And so we're going to try to do that today. Yeah. So as I read this, just realize that this comes from a partner. It's very kind of intense, but I loved her vulnerability, her rawness in expressing this. And it sounds like she's very supportive of her addict partner as well. Mm-hmm. So here's what she says. At the very beginning of her submission, she says, regarding cross-dressing, she says, right at the front of what she sent us. And she says, hi guys, thank you so much for your podcast. My husband has made a big disclosure about 2 months ago. That's a formal disclosure about all of his addiction in the past. So it sounds like they've had formal disclosure. And your show has particularly helped me find language for what I think and feel about this situation. Thank you. You're welcome. In his recent disclosure, my husband told me for about 8 months, he's been concealing his active addiction to porn and masturbation. Then she says he also, and she has also in big capital letters, he also told me that he has been compulsively stealing my lingerie to wear and masturbate in. He says he doesn't know why he does it, but just that there's something arousing about wearing the lingerie and seeing himself in it. My therapist told me that she's seen a good bit of cross-dressing with porn addicts, and that he might be expressing something called autogenophilia. And she asked us, have you run into cross-dressing or this philia in your practices? I can't find much literature on this topic. I'm not sure how to integrate the cross-dressing into my understanding of him. Does this impact his prospects for recovery and the ability to have a normal relationship with me? So that's her full submission. And then there was another short submission from a partner who says, so my main question is, can you talk about porn and the escalation into more, quote, taboo content and behaviors? And also, how can you, as an addict or a partner, help escape the hold this taboo content keeps on you, even in recovery? So those were the two submissions that came in. Pretty heavy topics.
Yeah, and we're going to do our best to address this in a short and amended podcast, right? We don't pick heavy topics in here, as you can tell. Just light stuff. We slow ball or light ball things around here. So, if you would like more in-depth information on this as well as any other topic, daretoconnectnow.com, 2-week free trial. We'd love to have you come join us. But yeah, looking at this, I think probably the best thing to do today is to have let's kind of just talk these different, let's talk about these different terms, what they mean in this realm, because there are a million Philias out there,
Oh my gosh,
right?
yeah.
I mean, far too many to list. If we talk about fetishes, Philias, that kind of thing, there are anything under the sun. It seems like that you can imagine has been labeled or designated as a quote unquote modality for sexual arousal or sexual gratification. And so we're not even going to get into the length and breadth of any of that today. What we are going to mention, though, is that obviously they're numerous, and some of them would definitely be considered destructive or dangerous for reasons ranging from safety to illegality. We're going to focus on things that do not fall under a legal pretense or would be considered at least physically safe, and talk about those. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what we're going to focus today.
Yeah, and so there's many of them. It's a psychological term. It just, you know, different types of sexual attraction or arousal towards specific objects, situations, or people.
Yep.
Um, many people experience sexual attraction towards other people, but there's lots of cases where this attraction is directed towards, unusual or atypical elements, as we call it. Some examples that we run into all the time as part of recovery from pornography and sexual addiction would be things like, paraphilias like voyeurism, exhibitionism,
Yeah.
fetishes, sadism, and masochism, just to name a very, very few. And she wrote in about a specific one that her husband is experiencing.
Yeah. Had to
So
cross-dressing masturbation linked
yeah,
to it,
yeah,
right?
all of that.
So,
And
yeah.
like we said, we're not here to declare what's normal or not normal. We're talking about these things in general, but we do want to get to the place where hopefully, as we discuss this today, it comes out of the realm of what Steve and I call the mysterious, the frightening, the hopeless, right? So that we can at least start to understand it enough to get into a dialogue.
Yeah.
Can we start to talk about this openly and transparently? And mainly, how do these things, not exactly what they are or are they normal, healthy, et cetera, but how do they directly impact your recovery, your healing, your coupleship? That's what matters here.
Yeah.
What are these things for you?
Yeah.
So in trying to get to that basic understanding, let's talk first, uh, just briefly, about the causes. Now, we can't say this enough. This is an extremely complex area of psychology. I mean, I'm going to understate that no matter what adjectives I use. This is crazy complicated. So please don't try to take what we say generally and apply it to everyone and everything. But generally speaking, I enunciate the word possible. Here are some possible paths that can lead to these kinds of behaviors. So let's talk about them real quick. One of them, obviously, is exposure to pornography in all its forms. The big challenge with today's pornography is that there's no limitations or boundaries. You have the potential to be exposed to, quote, taboo materials of all kinds of endless forms that can, quite frankly, trigger all kinds of philias, all kinds of different behaviors, mindsets, attitudes. And here's my thing. If you indulge in today's pornography long enough, dysfunction will result. Am I safe in making that blanket statement, Steve?
And just to clarify, Mark, are you referring to sexual dysfunction?
Just any, you're going to have dysfunctional attitudes, not
Attitudes, yeah.
normal, not healthy. Something is going to go awry if you continue to partake in today's pornography. You're not going to stay healthy.
Well, and that's part of the problem with the inherent issue with pornography, right? We talk about this all the time, but just to reiterate again, we're not here talking from a Sunday school perspective or anything like that. We're
No.
here to look at the clinical issues or potential problems surrounding pornography. And one of the ones that Mark and I, as recovering porn addicts and sex addicts in long-term recovery, know all too well is the warping or distortion that especially frequent, regular, uh, deep diving into the porn world can cause, because the deeper you go into it, as Mark indicated, the further and further you leave any sense of reality or quote unquote normalcy when it comes to sexual activity. And the
Yes.
brain is conditioned to be, I mean, we all come wired with an inherent arousal template, at birth, that develops in during sexual maturation. But we know there's lots of research to indicate that arousal template is malleable, changeable, for better or for worse. And so there
And
are lots of, and there probably is no more efficient medium, I guess is the way I would put it, at changing one's arousal template than pornography.
absolutely. And we
Um,
don't have time to talk about this today, but you take all of what we're saying about the pornographic world, the sexualized culture world, and now take what we call masturbatory conditioning, masturbatory reward system, and plug it in with that pornography. And now I'm rewarding through the most powerful biological experience the body can experience, sexual climax. And I'm climactically reinforcing and rewarding through nearly always masturbation, and throw that whole masturbatory conditioning into this mix. Now you have a pretty powerful recipe for changing perspectives, attitudes, approaches, functionality. And again, we could spend 10 episodes on that.
sure.
But all that, then add into all of that we've just said, and now we have the whole area of sexual trauma, sexual abuse, that is unfortunately all too often experienced as we grow up in our child, teen, adult lives. That is part of this mix.
Well, and then coupling onto that, and this is kind of the catch-all, other life experiences, which are frankly just too many to list,
Yeah.
have an impact on one's arousal template and what causes arousal, right? I mean, for example, if you and by the way, we need to say this. It should be noted that we do not regard nor do we judge here at PBSE/D2C all Philias as destructive or problematic or even as taboo, right? And
Yeah.
we're going to talk about that in a minute, because whether these things are quote unquote healthy or not, which is I know what many of you are trying to glean from this, has a lot more to do with the mentality and the impact it's having, and much less to do with the behaviors. But again, we're going to get into that in just a second. But if we look at, I mean, other life experiences, which again are just too numerable to list, can have a huge impact on this. I have worked with many clients over the years, for example, who have, well, I won't even give specific examples. I don't want to be too triggering on a podcast, in a podcast setting, but where they have linked not abusive situations, but certain elements of from their childhood or other experiences they've had that have registered as in their brain for whatever reason as exceptionally nurturing, for example,
Yeah.
that have then fed into certain preferences that they have in the sexual realm. I'm just
Yeah.
going to keep it really general, right?
Yeah. That certain experiences that were legitimately pleasurable.
They weren't bad.
Yeah,
They
not
weren't
just sexually
nefarious. They weren't
pleasurable, but just pleasurable to the body, and in general sense. Those
correct.
connections are made as we grow up. Absolutely. There's so many things can contribute to this. This is why you can't just pass blanket judgments.
Yeah, we're not trying to say that this whole world is just because it's taboo means it's problematic or bad. And again, it's gonna make more sense in just a second, okay?
Yeah.
Um, so that is the first thing. We look at these causes and conditions. Then the second piece is what I've been alluding to, right? It's this impact piece. And the real focus here is, are these behaviors healthy or not? Now, we have a whole list of questions that we have kind of put together based on our experience with clients, based on our own experience in recovery, as we've been doing this for, I don't know, what are we coming up on, 40 or 50 years between the two of us, doing this professionally and personally, of kind of litmus test questions that one can put oneself through to gauge how this is this specific behavior or philia or activity healthy or unhealthy for you and or your coupleship, because the answer to those two questions may not always line up. Okay. For each of these questions that we're going to talk about, you need to be asking it on both sides. The first answer is this, how does this question reconcile, or how does the answer reconcile for me personally? The second one is, how does it reconcile for my partner? So I guess there's actually three. And the third is, what impact does this have on our coupleship?
Yeah, there's three vantage points to come at all of this from, right? And you'll notice we're using the words healthy or unhealthy. It's not so much a lens of a specific set of behaviors that we want to, take some stringent, rigid, narrowed approach to. Yep, good, bad. It's more the results that these activities generate.
Yes.
So we're not going to pass some big, gavel of judgment on any of these. We're just going to give all of you a whole bunch of questions to ask yourselves and your coupleship, so that you can start determining whether this is healthy or unhealthy for you or not.
Yeah.
So here are the questions.
Well, and I like the first one that we put on this list, and I think it's appropriate to begin with. Does this activity increase or decrease vulnerability? Okay.
I think we need to say what vulnerability means, don't we?
I mean, vulnerability is the the word has two meanings. The one that, there's the one that we don't talk about much here, which is vulnerabilities are regarded as weaknesses, right? The one that we talk about typically here, and we're talking about being vulnerable, is exposing oneself, right? In a way that leaves you open to connection or to collaboration. It puts the most intimate, or what would you say, the most, I don't know, sensitive parts of ourselves on display, right? It's the degree to which we do all that with a partner. It's a huge component to intimacy.
Yeah.
We talked about this, like, oh yeah, go ahead, Mark.
As I say, does it decrease or increase my willingness, my safety, my openness to show all of me? Right? It's the deepest levels of intimacy. Into me you see, into you I see. We're putting our whole selves out on the table, holding nothing back. Does it increase or decrease that?
Hey everybody, it's your PBSC podcast co-host here, Mark and Steve, with a special message to all of you about our revolutionary recovery program for addicts, spouses, and couples, Dare to Connect. Nearly every day, we receive messages from subscribers in the program, couples who are just like you, trying to heal from the devastating effects of sex addiction, pornography addiction, and betrayal trauma. Recently, we actually received an amazing feedback message of hope from a current D2C subscriber, and we wanted to just share it with you quickly. She says, "This is a partner. I am grateful that while you fully address this addiction as a disease and that it takes over the addict's life, you both also fully address the impact their behaviors and their betrayals have had on the partner. Your words and teachings on partner betrayal trauma opened my husband's eyes to his responsibilities and role in helping me heal. He has stepped fully into the gap to lead this process, and we are making such progress. I originally started D2C by myself, as my addict partner was not interested in anything I had to say about recovery. He was working recovery through another program, but his work was off limits to me. I had listened to so many of your PBSC podcasts, and I realized that I needed more than I was getting through my own support group. So I signed up for the Dare to Connect 2-week trial."
And then she continues. She says, "One night, my husband looked over my shoulder and asked what I was doing. I shared Dare to Connect with him. He tried it, and he's been fully engaged ever since. Steve and Mark's knowledge and experience speak to him, and he has implemented so many of the things that have been suggested. Thank you for your straight, hard-hitting approach. Keep it up. Our marriage has deepened tremendously, and we are stronger than we've ever been, even while working through the mess that this addiction has made. We're happy, loyal, and incredibly grateful D2Cers." We absolutely love these success stories. It's the reason why we do everything that we do in D2C, to help all of you find lasting recovery and healing. So come on over and join us in the D2C program. You can do it with a free 2-week trial, and you find that at daretoconnectnow.com. Way question.
Well, and does this activity increase or does this increase and demonstrate respect and value for my partner and myself, or does it decrease it? Again, you can tell that these answers are very subjective, right? And again, this is a general podcast. We get a little bit more, a lot more nitty gritty in the Dare to Connect show. But so come over there if you want more in-depth info on this. But yeah, for a podcast, keeping it general, I mean, I've worked with with clients over the years where I could take any number of sexual behaviors and I could find you a client probably on my roster right now where for that client and his partner, extremely connecting, for another couple that I see 2 hours later would be the end of their relationship.
Be the end of their relationship. Yeah, yeah.
And the activity is exactly the same.
Mm.
It has everything to do with, again, the two people involved, their trauma background, what they've experienced, what paradigm they're coming from, their background or presence or lack thereof of addiction. I mean, all sorts of things,
Yeah,
right? It's all about how is it impacting them.
their value system, what matters
Yeah.
to them, what's authentic to them, right? All of those. Does it increase or decrease safety for me, for my partner? Right? What is the level of safety? What is the level of trust? Does it build trust? Does it make me feel more secure or less?
Yeah.
Does it increase or decrease my desire to share myself sexually and otherwise with my partner or not? Do I open up or do I shut down? Do I withhold or do I expand in my expression?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this activity traumatic in any way for me or for my partner? Now, I want to say something about this one because we don't have a question specifically regarding this on the list, but it really should be. I would argue that sexual connection, whatever it looks like with another person, carries with it a few attributes. In fact, Mark and I listed these in more detail in our book, The Pornography Paradox. But a couple of things, regardless of the activity, a couple of the things that come to mind that should always be tied in with whatever activity we're engaging in, if it's healthy, is one, it should always be by invitation and not by compulsion. Healthy sexual activity is going to be something that I am invited to and not pressured into. It's something that I consent to, pressure free.
Yeah. Is
Okay.
it coerced? Is there agenda? Is there
Am I
intent
manipulated
involved?
into
Right.
it? Right.
Manipulated in, yeah, all those things.
And
Yeah.
and it kind of ties in with that respect piece that we just talked about, right? And you guys can see why this is so relative, right? Because so much of this has to do with feeling and perception,
Absolutely.
right? Again, certain activities, some sexual partners, male or female, may feel extremely empowered by and liberated by. You may get the next person may be absolutely abhorred by that. And neither one of them is right. It has everything to do with this expression of the authentic self, the connecting with myself and with my partner, and are we strengthening that or tearing it down?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. You and I love this other part. Does it connect me with my partner and them with me in ways that where we are looking to build this relationship?
Yeah.
Does it build us up or does it tear us down? And we often hear talk about the 8 areas of intimacy. Is it building our relationship, not just in the sexual, which is only one of the 8? Is it building in all of the other 7? Right? A big mistake that's made with regard to these issues that we're talking about today is that they are approached in a vacuum. And in a relationship, there's no such thing as a relationship vacuum. You
Yeah.
have to look at how it impacts everything else. So how does it impact all 8 areas of our intimacy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next one on this list, for me, speaking personally in my sexual recovery experience, okay, as an addict myself, probably is the most important question on this whole list. Is this let's see. Does this activity connect me to the present and to the real, or to fantasy and to the synthetic?
Mm, great
We're going to
question.
talk about this more in a minute when we get to the solution side,
Great
but
question.
it is interesting how, after having been, in a place of SA defined sobriety for over a decade now, how contrasting being in an addict mindset versus a healthily minded, holistic mindset is during a sexual experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Do I
again, we're
feel
going to
like,
break that
yeah.
down in a minute, but they are like night and day
Do I
if you've
feel
been
like
in
I've
recovery.
remained in my higher, truer, authentic self that I'm proud of, that I feel like I'm in control of, that I'm monitoring and regulating and directing, or is the whole process taken over?
I mean, if I'm sexually in a sexually healthy place, I am just kind of, it's gonna sound cheesy, but I am just kind of enveloped by my partner's presence,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like during that time, they're my whole world. As opposed to like a pornified experience or a disconnected experience where it's the exact opposite. The goal is getting off, not to be too crass. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no consideration for how is this other person feeling or how is it impacting them or even how is it impacting me for that matter in the long term. Right? It's completely centered on this 100%. It's completely pleasure focused exclusively.
Exclusively. Yeah.
Right?
Exclusively. Yeah, exactly.
So
Is the activity in harmony with my own and my coupleship's authenticity? Is this in harmony with who I really believe that I am at my highest level? Is it authentic to my partner? Is she and her higher, best, most integrated self? And does it help the two authentic versions of us to come together and be authentic as a coupleship? Am I able to vulnerably express myself, or do I need to conform to be accepted by my partner in these activities? That's a really important question. Do I feel like I have something to say about this and I'm staying true to myself, or do I feel manipulated, coerced? I need to conform to keep things on an even keel, to keep him pleased, to keep her happy. How does that whole thing apply here?
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Um, am I able to vulnerably express myself, or do I need to conform to be accepted?
We just did that one.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. I guess we did. I did double read it. I'm
Yeah.
just thinking about the conform piece. I'm going to come back to that in a second. What premium or value is placed on my ability or capacity to quote unquote perform?
Ah, yeah. We should read that one again. What premium or value is placed on my ability or capacity to quote perform?
So this has everything to do with expectations, right? Kind of ties in with that pressuring piece that we talked about a moment ago, but it very much has to do with this place of am I feeling pressure to quote unquote be enough? I mean, I'll just go ahead and say it. I would say that if there is a single experience on planet Earth where your enoughness, quote unquote, should not be questioned, it should be during a healthy sexual experience with your
I
partner.
totally agree.
If you're not feeling that, again, speaking as an addict in recovery, I don't know. That doesn't leave much left really significantly appealing, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah. If you feel like you're on stage, like there's pressure to do things a certain way, or to reach a certain level, or to whatever, that immediately leaves the realm of true intimacy, right? Of truly being able to be me, and me is enough without all this other stuff. Yeah. Very important question. Um, is it taking me further along my journey to where I want to go or who I want to be? Or is it moving me away from that? Great question.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And the other one is right on the tail end of that. Am I feeling connected with my partner in the ways that resonate with my authentic self, and their authentic self with them?
Yeah. A healthy sexual experience, guys, and I love that question because this should deepen and bring out the authenticity of a person, right? It should be all about being in the present, in the now, kind of going back to what we talked about before, right? If I and I think Mark and I we have a sensitivity to this because we've engaged in a non-bragging way in so much disconnected physical or sexual activity. It's just depressing.
Yeah. How many
Um,
times? How many times did we force our partner to become something we or they were not? Authentically speaking, we became something else.
and it's expectations driven, and it's just a pursuit of. It's all about that hyper focus on the orgasm and everything. I mean, there's just a whole mentality to that. We don't have time to get into all that today, but it's that shift, right? And I guess I'm gonna that's a good segue into this piece that we said we were going to talk about. For those addicts who are listening to this podcast, we know that's a good number of you. The question is, does this activity take you closer to a quote unquote recovery mindset or to quote unquote an addict mindset? For every person, that looks a little bit different. I mean, I could give you, I'll just give you a list, for example. I can tell you the persona of my addict: demanding, impatient, wanting everything yesterday, rigid expectations, right? The list goes easily angered, highly reactive. The list goes on.
And to add to that from mine, setting aside my value system in that moment to do whatever was wanted to pursue pure pleasure, right? Stepping from Dr. Jekyll into Mr. Hyde. And what is
Yeah.
Mr. Hyde capable of?
Mm-hmm.
A lot.
Contrast that with what? Calm, boundaried, non-impulsive, deliberate is a word I would use.
Mhm.
Right, in action. I mean, there's just, again, that's for any addict listening to this, if you've experienced a kind of a taste of recovery, you will know what we're talking about there.
Yeah, you can tell when you're in the addict mindset or you're in the true self mindset.
Yeah,
You
for
can.
sure.
You can. So if these behaviors we're talking about, which place does it put you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then if we talk about so let's talk solutions for a second.
Yeah.
If after looking at all these questions individually, as an addict, as a partner in healing, and as a coupleship, if you look at these questions and you decide that some aspects of what you're engaging in is not healthy, not connecting, not healing, not authentic, now what? What do you do next?
Mm. It's a good
Yeah.
question.
I think, and Steve, you and I talked about this before we started today. The thing that both of us put as number one on our list was you must both be willing to open up the dialogue
Yeah, for
and
sure.
bring it all out into the bright spotlight.
This doesn't work if we say this all the time on the podcast, but to reinforce it, whatever you're doing in the bedroom needs to be an expression and a extension of what you're doing emotionally.
Yeah.
It's always shocking how many people out there are able to have sex but can't talk about it.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to be vulnerable and open, right? If we're going to have any significant exchange and increase the meaningfulness, the significance, or address issues in the bedroom, you have to be able to talk about it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um,
No, this is where there are no taboo topics. Right. Right. We're asking about taboo sexual behaviors.
yeah.
There's taboo topics about the dialogue that you open up about this.
This is
And
me. This is what I
yeah,
like. This is why. This is what I don't. This is why. This is what scares me. This is what really thrills me. This is what excites me. This is something I will never be open or willing to do, and here's why. Right? These are the conversations we need to be having.
right. Exactly. Yeah. And can I create an environment of safety and openness and collaboration and true friendship and love where these topics can be discussed openly by both parties? Yeah. And Steve, I'll tell you one of when I was deep in addiction, if someone would have asked me all the questions we asked previous to this, I don't think I could have given you authentic answers. And I'll tell you why. It's very important that we all are very mindful about where it is we should judge whether these things are healthy, connecting, and authentic for us or not. We talk about the neuroscience of not just addiction, but the neuroscience of sexuality, sexual experience. It's shaped like an hourglass, with it's wide at the top, and we go into that hourglass of sexual experience. These wonderful chemicals released, this tidal wave of hormones, and all these processes going on, and it's truly can be remarkable. And it's all leading us to that really narrow place in the center of that hourglass that we call sexual climax, right? The crescendo, the climactic experience. Then after we come to that climax, all of those chemicals dissipate, all that stuff fades into the distance, and our full capacity to have our prefrontal cortex engaged and look at the broad experience, we call it the wide bottom part of the funnel after climax. That's where we invite all of you to judge these experiences that you're trying to decide, are they healthy or not? Not in the anticipation, not in the pure excitement of being in the sexual funnel, but what's it all like after it's over? I invite you, if you haven't done this, come together as a couple after sex and talk about what it was like after the climax is over, after the heat of the moment is done. Come together and talk about it in the bottom of that funnel. That's where you can really start to judge whether this is healthy or not for you individually and as a coupleship.
No, I think that's great advice. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, really, guys, you can see a common thread here, right? It's all about connecting, collaborating. But I guess one caveat to add as we're ending here is remember, connection always happens from the top down. We talk about that on here often. And we don't have time to go into it today, but if I'm going to share myself with my partner in these deep, significant, impactful ways, who do I have to connect with first? It's me, right?
Oh,
I
yeah, yeah,
have to be doing the work on a daily basis to figure me out. Everybody who listens to this podcast, I'm sure, can relate to, whether it's because of betrayal trauma or addiction or both, can relate to how hard that can be when you're not doing the emotional work to keep your vessel clean, so to speak, to make sure that you are connecting with those pieces of you that are authentic and real. We live in a world that is constantly pulling us away from that person, right?
yes.
Constantly pulling us into wearing all the different hats that we're expected to do every day, and that's the necessity of the world that we live in. But we have to be taking time each day to take the hats off. Steve needs every day. I need to not be Dad Steve or Husband Steve or D2C Steve or PBSE Steve or Therapist Steve. I need a little bit of time every day to just explore Steve.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Who are you? What really matters? What is at your deepest soul? How can you know what's healthy in a relationship until you know that? And those of you who have been through addiction, and especially partners who've been through betrayal trauma, there's a lot of healing work to be done to even know what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because one of the things we say, you as a coupleship, you may well need a complete sexual reset. We talk about almost starting from scratch because we don't know what's healthy. And we're so much in this sexual rut. We almost have to go back to the initial stages of dating and courting. Let's hold hands, see what that's like.
Yeah.
Right. Let's kiss and see what that is. You may need a
Mm-hmm.
whole sexual reset. And the thing we want to all of you to take away from this, you are not victims. You are not slaves to what's been happening. You are totally empowered and enabled as individuals in a coupleship to decide what is healthy for you. You get to make that decision, not the culture, not pornography, not trauma, not any of those things. You get to decide what each of you and the two of you want going forward. You get to build what that is from scratch.
Yes.
We hope you'll feel that empowerment.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for letting us in your hearts and homes, as always. We appreciate being here with you and you being here with us. As always, we would love to have you, if you like tackling topics like these, especially delving into the difficult components. Right now, we just began releasing in our D2C Advanced Academy course as part of your D2C subscription. Those who have been in the program for 6 months or longer can now access the Healthy Sexuality course, which is going to be at least 28 weeks long.
28 weeks.
So, in addition to all of
Sexuality.
the other live content and interactive content and Q&A and everything else that we're offering and new things we're rolling out, you also have now 2 advanced courses in there, that one and the one on healthy disclosure. So, there is more content in the world of connection, betrayal trauma, addiction recovery, and all things in between and mixed in with that than you could probably ever take in, along with a collaborative community of people who get it and who can support you on the journey, including Mark and I. Please come and check us out. You can grab a 2-week trial of that at daretoconnectnow.com. We'd love to have you come give that a shot.
Yeah. And as always, if you got questions for this PBSE podcast, send them through.
Yep.
You'll go if you go to pbsepodcast.com, you'll see that it takes you to the D2C site now. But at the top, you'll see a banner that you click on to go into the PBSE page. And at the bottom is a place where you can send questions.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
we invite those.
Awesome.
All right. There you go, everybody. Thanks for being here. And we will look forward to pick things up on our next episode.
Absolutely. Have a great one, guys.
Everything expressed on the PBSE podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.